Hello, I'm here today with Willow J Conway. Willow has been involved in many aspects in the entertainment industry for more than 25 years. She started out working and training as an actor in Adelaide and has found her way into many other aspects of performance, which we'll talk about today. Willow, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with where you started. Where did you start your theatre life?
I started in Adelaide, so I was brought up in Adelaide, and I always did like after school drama classes, so I always had an interest in drama and dance, and I actually started doing competition gymnastics. That was where I first, I think, actually performed, because it was there was performance element in it, which was when I was about 10 years old. When I was 18, I went and studied acting for a year. Just did a short course. It was like a foundation course for a 3-year, advanced diploma. But I did the short course, which was a Cert 4. So that was like the first time I really seriously looked at performance. And from there, I went into doing circus. I was in a circus for a while. And from there, I went into having children and studied music. And when I was studying music, I decided there was one subject that we were doing, which was performance for musicians, so working with stage presence. And I went, hang on, that's right, that's what I actually really love doing. So I got the little itch to go back to acting, and then I went and auditioned for the Adelaide Acting School and got in. And so I did that.
So you would have been a more mature student when you found your way into acting school.
I was almost the oldest. So we started with 20 students in the class, but some of them were doing just the first year of the 3-year course as a refreshment year. But when they finished their year, I was the oldest. Yes, I was 28 when I started.
Right.
Whereas some of the others were 16, 17, 18.
Wow.
Oh, maybe 17 was the...
So what was it like being 9 years older than some of the other people in the class?
9 years older and a single mum. And the only one with kids.
Right.
It was great. Like I felt, I had been travelling for quite a while around Australia, living in the bush, living in teepees, living out of a bus. So it was good to connect with the people 10 years younger than me, to see what was going on in that world. Like, I was totally out of touch with what is the groovy music of the day. But then I felt like I also had a lot of different experience to bring and to offer the class as well.
So what brought you to Melbourne?
When I was finishing up the 3 years, I always knew I was going to get out of Adelaide. I didn't want to stay based there. I'm a bit of a traveller, come and go. And then I came over to Melbourne for an audition for Secret Life of Us, I think it was. That was like not long after I graduated. And when I was here, I was staying with some friends, and we had conversation about a new work that they were developing, and they asked if I wanted to audition for it, and I auditioned for it. It was more a physical theatre piece. It was at the Carlton Courthouse, and and they offered me the role, and it started, I can't remember when the rehearsal started, but it was like middle of the year, so I went, okay, well, I've got something to move over for. So I was actually going to move a year later, but I moved a bit earlier and started work on that.
Willow, you are the current Miss Burlesque Australia. Slightly different tack from being in the straight theatre. How did Burlesque find you?
It found me here in Melbourne. A friend that I had worked with before in what we called mutant cabaret, so it was more experimental, self-devised pieces that were quite dark and visceral, quite Autoian based, so another different world as well. She asked me if I wanted to be in a burlesque troupe, and I was like, yeah, I'll do anything. Yeah, sure. What's burlesque? So I went and researched a bit to find out what burlesque is, and what I found out about it, I thought, okay, this is something I can work on my own pieces, my own ideas, develop them, create them, and there's, it was like a platform where I could put my own things on, my own work on, as well as being involved in an ensemble because we were essentially a troupe. So I said, yep, and then we started rehearsing and really not knowing what it was. But I think it has developed a lot over the last 15 years in Melbourne, from what it started up as to where it is now, where now it's a common household name. Everybody knows what burlesque is, or at least like has an idea about what it is. But if you look into the history of what it really is, then maybe it is something different to what we perceive it as. But yeah, so that's pretty much how I got it. It was just on yeah, sure, why not, I'll do this with one of my closest friends, and so we started working.
And that has taken you down a path of being able to create your own work, as you said. So what do you think are the main skills that you need to be able to successfully create your own work?
I think you need to be highly motivated and disciplined, someone who can work alone. So if you're used to working in company or ensemble situations, then stepping aside and having to be your own creator, own director, own designer, own musical composer, if you are making a piece from scratch, then you have to be highly motivated and disciplined and creative as well, and you have to be able to be here and there at the same time. So you need to be able to view yourself from outside and critique your own work, but it's also smart to get someone else in to do that once you get it to a certain point. But essentially I'd say creative, disciplined, motivated.
Yeah, and they are skills you don't normally expect people to have at the same time, creativity and discipline.
Yeah, because a lot of time I guess creatives are supported by disciplined and motivated people, a lot in the arts world. It is like being, I find it's probably most similar to being a fine artist, where you are in your own space creating your own work. So they have the canvas or the clay or whatever to work with, and we have our bodies and our stories. So essentially we are creating a big art piece, but it's with it's a 5-minute piece, but it still has to have all those elements of a story, a journey, a picture, images, context. It still has to have everything that perhaps a play would have, or a piece of art. It has all that work. But it sometimes feels what I imagine it would be like being a fine artist, where you're in your own space and you're creating your own work.
So what's been your favourite piece of self-devised work?
Perhaps I think I have a few.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
I don't know what my favourite one is, because they're quite different.
They're all your children.
A lot of burlesque artists are known for either being classic, or for being neo, or for being unique, or circus or whatever. But I feel like I'm a bit wishy-washy. Like I'm not really sure which one, because I enjoy doing neo, I enjoy doing unique, and I enjoy pushing boundaries, trying to create something new that hasn't been seen or done before. And classic, I've recently developed a classic piece, and I hadn't really done any classic before, which I love doing. But possibly my favourite one to do is Domestic Bliss, which was the very first piece that I did. And it developed a lot over years. I think it took me 13 years to get it to a point where I was really happy with it, and I performed it at the Burlesque Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. And 4 years ago. It has a lot of dance in it. It's tango, striptease. I'm using a washing machine, and it tells a story, and it's commenting on the 50s housewife, which I think there's still very relevant issues today that happen with that piece still probably.
It still resonates.
Resonates to today. Another piece I really enjoy doing is the auction, where I'm in a picture frame and I get auctioned off. I don't get auctioned off, an auctioneer auctions me off. And I start as a very conservative painting, and I end up as a classic nude. So I step outside of the painting, and as the audience bids and the bids go up, my clothes start coming off, and the more they... another one is more of a darker piece, and it's a half man, half woman. So it's based on 40s film noir. It involves a murder, it involves sexual abuse, or suggestion of a man crossing the line where the woman doesn't want him to be, doesn't want it, and it gets into a point and she pulls a gun on him. Wow. And they have a fight and someone dies, but I just leave it up to the audience to decide who died. Maybe they both did. Wow. But it's a lot darker, but it's a harder one to do because it relies on really good lighting and it's very cinematic, and so to get that cinematic effect on stage doesn't usually work in a burlesque context when you've got 2 minutes to take a piece, right, and where the lighting and blackouts and everything are really important. But that's probably it's the trickiest one. When I was developing it, I used to feel nauseous because I'd have to literally swap from the man to the woman, and it's physically challenging and mentally challenging, especially doing spins from one to the other.
So what you're describing is far more than what I would have traditionally thought burlesque is. What you're describing is dance, it's theatre, it's creating really strong characters as well as the old art of disrobing, if you like, the traditional burlesque. So you've taken burlesque in a range of different directions. What do you think are the skills that you've learned in all of the burlesque work that you've done that you now want to bring back into drama?
Well, one thing probably the most I've learned is being able to tell a story without voice, and to be able to physically take someone on a journey with that. Sometimes I go and see dance and I just have, I love it. I love watching bodies move through space, but I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. But I think through doing burlesque I've learned how to tell the story without using words, without vocalizing. So for me, I feel like it's developed my physical side of the actor. So, which is interesting because now coming back to film, I know it's still a lot of, but there's more subtle physicality. So I'm going to have to learn how to hone the larger than life back down again. But I think that's it, being able to just be, the classic reckless abandonment, just put it out there and be big, be bold, be brave, I guess say brave, but big and bold, larger than life. Also have learnt a lot about direction and how to, mostly directing myself, but how to direct and how to produce, because essentially you are your own director, your own producer, your own designer, your own writer, your own everything. But within my years of doing burlesque, I also developed group pieces, a show called The Living Museum of Erotic Women, where it was a celebration of women who have been revered as erotic, and it was, we had many characters from Saint Teresa of Avila to Lola Montez, Lily St. Cyr, like classic known burlesque artists. But there were actually only about 3 burlesque, and all the rest were other historical women.
You're now ready to step away from the burlesque part of your life, and I'm interested to know what you think you're going to take with you from burlesque into the acting world, and what difficulties you think you might face. One of the issues I think that's going to be major is that I'm labelled burlesque, and in the 50s, the 40s, you could be burlesque, you could be doing burlesque, and you could be the star of a film. You can do both. But I feel now being labelled burlesque, even though it's the connotations that were around, maybe 5 years ago was, oh, you're burlesque, you're just the same as a stripper, you just take your clothes off, but in an artistic way. I think that is, so I've been a stripper as well, and there are there's definitely similar aspects to burlesque and stripping, and burlesque essentially is stripping, but it's the mentality of people
you know, to say, yes, I'm burlesque, yes, I'm a stripper, yes, I'm an actor, yes, I can do all this, but because you hear burlesque as stripper, that possibly could put this up. Even though I know people are, I hope people are more open-minded these days. Burlesque also isn't seen as a high art form, whereas perhaps film and television and state theatre, etc., is more viewed, opera is more viewed as a higher art form. Burlesque still, even though there's some very successful burlesque troupes out there like Briefs and Hot Brown Honeys, who are doing incredible work around the world and, you know, getting lots of support and funding. It still is seen
and
as...
the work that you described, the specific items, acts I guess you call them, that you described were very theatrical.
Yeah.
As you said, they have a story. They are very much, they are short pieces of theatre.
Yeah, which is what I think I brought into burlesque, that was my strength, bringing in the acting and the emotion and the need to connect and the need to tell a story. So coming full circle round and back into that, I'm faced with not only the struggles that you have as an Australian actor, where there's very few roles for us out there, and especially if we're not, you know, if we're not established at this point in our careers, then it is quite difficult to break in there. So it's like, firstly, how do I break in there? And then how do I break in there once they know that I've come from a burlesque world? Most people see burlesque and they think burlesque the movie, or they think burlesque Dita Von Teese, but there's a whole lot of burlesque that is theatrical, that is acting, that draws upon emotion, that draws upon everything that actors that we need to draw upon as that are our tools. Well, there's many of us that are using that in burlesque. So burlesque basically became, well, for me anyway, you know, it's more like an umbrella for people to bring their new and unique work. And yes, there is lots of crap burlesque, but there's also lots of great burlesque. So yeah, that is one obstacle that I'm having to overcome. And also because it's been like possibly, you know, a good 10 years since I've really done any film and television work, it's who am I now? Like, I'm not that age group anymore. I don't know what, you know, and we do get typecast, and I don't even know what that type is anymore. But things that I think I can bring into it that I've learned are, I feel like my physical side has developed immensely through all the work, and I've continued to train in physical theatre and do Butoh. I've worked on a Butoh show for 3 years. Travelled around Japan and around Australia. That's another different aspect of the theatre work I've done, but it's bringing the physical back into it. So even when you're watching a film, even if it's just very subtle, even if it's like an extreme close-up, there's still strong physical elements going on, and I think that is something that changes, you know, that if you watch a really good actor and a not so good actor, I mean, yes, it's about connecting to the emotion, but...
And to the other actor.
But it is being very aware of your physical movements and your physical gestures, bringing that back, and also just the confidence that I've gained through doing, through perform, you know, because there would be times where I'd be performing like every weekend for 3 months in a row, and so just having that continuous being on stage, being out there, and also it's the way I would approach scripts now. I have a much different approach, because I used to look at them as lines and I'd instantly start thinking about how the character's going to say the line, and not very creative, but now I think I come and I'll look at the whole picture. And I think the creative energy has been really ignited, and so being able to look at a script very creatively as well. It's hard when you're not working and when you don't have that work. It's like, well, what am I doing? What am I getting up in the morning for? I don't have a job, I don't have an audition to go to, I don't have a script to work on, I don't have a character to develop. So keeping, you know, being able to maintain that and keep that energy up is hopefully something I can bring back after having to do years of self-discipline and motivation. Having been silent for, well, you know, performing without voice for so long, I'm just feel like bursting to use that tool, use the voice again. I did it, I used to do it. But just redeveloping that voice and finding that special tool that I haven't used for so long.
Is there a role that you would love to be able to do, and what is it?
Yeah. Have you seen Monster?
Oh yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. So a role that is just gutsy, real, honest, ugly. Something really like, or the mother from The Boys. Something that's really like someone who's struggled, who's fighting, who has a reason to fight, has a reason to have brilliant monologues. So someone who has come from a world of chaos and abuse and destruction and disharmony, and has a reason to be fighting for her life, fighting for her existence. Something gutsy, down, dirty, dark, and real. And like, this is what fucking life is about, boys and girls. You know, this is what it's about. This is real. People go through this shit. And we're here to share this with you and to say, you know what, it's okay to have this shit. It's okay to go through that. The other thing that I thought would be interesting, that I think that I can bring in, is the sexual energy, because I think that is so important in film and on screen, on stage, is to have that, not sexual as in hey, but just that tapping into the sexual energy is really, I think, important as a performer.
Yeah, I think
to share the spirit, the sexual energy, the emotional energy, the physical energy.
Well, thanks, Willow. I think that's a great point for us to finish on. I'm sure you're going to find that voice very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've been talking to Willow J Conway.